thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Antarctica, an international frontier by Commander Charles A. Snay, F.R.C. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 35, Number 1, January 1957. Antarctica, an international frontier by Commander Charles A. Snay, F.R.C. In charge of communications in the Operation Deep Freeze, Commander Charles A. Snay of the United States Task Force 43 makes here an informal report on his experiences in Antarctica in preparation for the International Geophysical Year, now in progress. Editor. The International Geophysical Year, now in progress until December 1957, is a worldwide major research into all the Earth sciences, including asto-geophysical measurements, meteorology, oceanography, glaciology, ionospheric physics, aurora and airglow, geomagnetism, cosmic rays, and rocket exploration of the upper atmosphere. The first recorded international cooperative effort for scientific study was undertaken in 1882 to 1883 and called a polar year. Its success suggested repetition, and it was agreed that another polar year would be observed in 50 years during 1932 to 1933. During those 50 years, the study of the Earth's sciences evolved so considerably that scientists decided that periods would be shortened to 25 years. During the last 25 years, increased scientific observatories located throughout the world have made it possible to take worldwide simultaneous observations. At an Inter-Allied Conference on International Scientific Organizations in London in 1918, an International Research Council was provisionally constituted. Since 1931, it has been known as International Council of Scientific Unions, or ICSU. Through the ICSU, some 40 nations will participate in the International Geophysical Year 1957 to 1958. In 1951, the recognition of the importance of the continent of Antarctica as a possible source of heretofore unrecognized scientific data within the field of Earth sciences, a special committee, CSAGI, was formed. Its membership was composed of scientific representatives of the international unions of astronomy, geodesy, and geophysics, radio, physics, geography, ionosphere, and on solar and terrestrial relationships. The proposed program, commencing July 1st, 1957, and continuing through December 31st, 1958, will include observations on geographic latitude and longitude, geomagnetism, ionosphere, aurora and airglow, meteorology, cosmic ray, glaciology, and solar activity. There will also be readings taken through seismology and gravity observations at some of the Antarctic stations. 14 nations have agreed to establish scientific stations on the continent of Antarctica for this International Geophysical Year during 1956 to 1957. Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, United Kingdom, United States, and USSR will have active stations. Because of the remoteness of the territory and its utter inaccessibility except for a short time, it was necessary that extensive preparations be made ahead of the actual beginning of the IGY. Additional smaller stations to provide for as complete a coverage for the various disciplines have continued to be established in 1957. This cooperative effort of an international scale will provide a pooling of techniques, skills, advanced equipment, as well as a continuity of readings and disciplines requiring several decades to determine fallacy or truth. One practical aspect is the study of weather. Much of the world weather is suspected to originate in or to be influenced by Antarctic conditions. Airflow and aurora are believed to be the result of bombardment of the Earth's atmosphere by high-speed particles. Differences of opinion exist as to the Earth's geographic poles being at the Earth's spin axis, or that the poles are contained within a definite area but tend to move about the surface of the Earth. It is natural, perhaps, for the layman to ask, what more can be achieved from these bases than from those located elsewhere? Principally, there are two answers to that question. A. This is a cooperative endeavor representing a worldwide effort. B. These Antarctic observations hold out the promise of data heretofore unknown. In addition, and almost equal to the above, are the possibilities of discovering new mineral deposits, developing new scientific techniques, and perfecting human engineering science conditions from an international point of view. There are, for instance, various types of minerals supposed to exist in unknown quantities in the Antarctic. Inaccessible as well as the required outlay in men and equipment makes commercial mining out of the question. Conditions are such as to argue against any permanent occupation required by commercial development. Only a primary type of vegetation exists, and that is in the form of moss-like growths. There is no record of human habitation except for exploratory in relatively modern times. Migration of any kind in the Antarctic is impossible in anything other than especially designed ice-breaking type vessels. There are no nearby land masses such as in the Arctic for man to hop from one to another. Incidentally, our chief means of transport were the weasel, a kind of enclosed jeep with tractor treads, the tractor sled train, the helicopter, skiing, or plain walking. These odds, coupled with the lack of vegetation and animal life, would suggest that on Antarctica, human life could not be self-sustaining. Personally, Antarctica presented conditions of severity and oscillation which I could never have believed without actually experiencing themselves. I visited the United States bases at both Little America 5 and McMurdo Sound as a part of Task Force 43 under the command of Rear Admiral George Dufat. Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd was the officer in charge. One major responsibility was that of establishing a base in which to winter. It was necessary to provide every item necessary to maintain life in this land with no vegetation, animal or amphibian life. Here only hardy explorers had ventured from time to time in the past century and a half. Here only birds precautiously exist, and complete isolation from the outside world prevails, except when the brief Antarctic spring makes it possible for long-range aircraft to fly in, or sturdy icebreakers to break through the ice pack. My adjustment to the existing conditions are relatively unimportant since I remained on board, living under somewhat normal cruising conditions, except for the nervous tension of hazardous operations. Since the time in which ships could remain adjacent to the continent was severely limited by the short Antarctic summer, the offloading, hauling, the final construction of the base required continuous working, 16 to 20 hours per day for all hands. Food was plentiful, 4 full meals a day, and access to tidbits from the ship's store or storage in icebox. The longer working hours required men to consume more food in order to maintain heat energy. Clothing issue was designed for bitter cold and proved highly effective under such conditions. Ordinarily, however, the weather during the Antarctic summer rarely dropped below 0 Fahrenheit and was not too uncomfortable unless a wind kicked up. There is no moisture in the air. Bases already activated have joined radio intercommunication networks for the exchange of meteorological data, weather, etc., as well as to test the compatibility of such networks in meeting the communication requirements during the International Geophysical Year. This was my concern, attempting to maintain continuous communication with all ships and units involved as well as radio stations in the United States. This meant checking and double-checking gear, ensuring the safe landing of equipment, planning for and construction of practicable radio stations, and providing for their effective operation. Not only that, it has also meant the planning and procurement of equipment and supplies to refurnish the existing bases. In addition, consideration had to be given to providing and equipping 3 or more proposed minor bases. Sufficient cargo had to be left at McMurdo Sound to be flown into the South Pole in the spring. Another cargo had to be left in Little America to be hauled by tractor into Marie Byrd Land. In short, the plan is to supply the 8 stations that the United States will operate during the IGY. Upon returning home, I activated my own amateur radio station so that I could talk directly with my men on the Antarctic bases whenever ionospheric conditions permitted. The radio was their only contact with the rest of the world. I have the greatest respect for their willingness to undergo this difficult experience. If I have any desire at all to get back there myself, it's only because I am eager to bring my men home. Like my own, their satisfaction and relief will be great. For the results of this study, made possible by the International Geophysical Year, will be immense. Partial view of Antarctica, showing some stations of various countries mentioned in the article. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.